Hello everybody, it's Murray here and welcome to this acrylic painting tutorial where we're going to paint this gorgeous beach landscape painting. So I've pre-prepared a gessoed white canvas and all I've done is I've got pencil to create an outline and I'm going over it in cerulean blue to create some beach rocks and some waves and now the beach, because I find it a lot easier painting when I have an outline to know where everything's going to be. Now here are the colours we're going to use today. They are titanium white, cad yellow, turquoise, cerulean blue, phthalo blue, ultramarine blue, dioxide purple and burnt umber. Now if you would like to, you can pause the video here and you can copy down the outline if that makes it easy for you, if you want to take a screenshot. But my outline is totally dry, so I can paint over it, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to paint in our sky. So we're going to mix white, cerulean blue and ultramarine blue to create a lovely pastel blue. So use plenty of white to make it nice and light, and we're going to paint the horizon where the sky and the ocean meet. I'm just using a big brush and I'm just blocking it in with this lovely pastel blue because the bottom of the sky is always lighter than the top. And then as we go up in the sky, we're going to combine the two blues, ultramarine and cerulean. Just a little bit more cerulean blue to make it nice and bright. A little less white. And we're just going to paint the top of our canvas and block it in. So we're just going to block her in at the top. And then I'm just going to wet my brush. And I'm just going to blend the two shades together. And what we should have is a lighter shade at the bottom and a darker shade of blue at the top. Now acrylics can dry really scruffy because they're water based. If that happens to you, just mix the same colours or just keep the paint that you've already got and just give it a second coat of paint. It gets all those scuff marks out and it just makes your work look much more professional. And then please dry your work with a hairdryer, because what we're going to do next is use a bit of painting tape. And we're just going to measure a straight line for our horizon, and we don't want to put that on wet paint because it will pull it all off. So please dry your painting. And then what we're going to do, we're going to create a nice dark blue to represent our ocean. So we're going to get some ultramarine blue, cerulean blue, and then this blue, which is called phthalo blue, which is a bit more turquoise. And we're going to go right up to our painting tape. And the great thing is because we've got a straight line now, we can go right up and not worry about having a wonky horizon. And this is going to signify deep ocean water. That's why it's so blue. Now, as we come towards the beach, we're going to get more shallow. So we're going to add more cerulean blue and turquoise. So cerulean blue and turquoise, a little bit of white. And we should get a nice sort of bluey turquoise colour. And we're just going to blend these two areas together, so there's not so much of a jump in colour. So we've got the deep water at the horizon, and we're going to get more shallow as we come over. We're going to mix turquoise and white, which I've got at the bottom pre-mixed. I'm just lazy, so I've got a lighter shade of turquoise, but all it is turquoise and white. So we're just going to mix that into our blue, and we're just going to come down here, and it should start to trick your eyes. And we can just blend this area together, just so there's not so much of a jump between the deep water and the more shallow water. But it should start tricking your eyes to make it look, whoops, got a dirty brush, let's just paint over that. To make it look like it's getting more shallow as it comes towards the beach. Look at that. And it's just by using colours. So now we're going to get some more turquoise and white. We're going to add some more white to make it pastel, and we're going to add cad yellow, and it should turn it a bit more lime, like a bit of lime green. And this is going to look like really see-through sort of tropical water that you get on a beach. God, I keep getting a dirty brush, never mind. And then all we're going to do, we're just going to block in this area, and we can just gently go back and forth, look gently with our brush, blend these two areas together to try to make our transitions look nice and seamless. And it should look like the water is getting more shallow and more see-through as it comes towards the beach. Now the beach and the sand kind of mix in this area. So what I'm going to do, we're going to paint the sand first. Let's get some white. lots of white and some cad yellow. So loads of white to make like a buttery yellow. We're going to add some brown just to make it look more earthy and more realistic, and a little bit of purple just to heat it up. So white, a little dot of cad yellow, a little dot of purple, and a little dot of burnt umber, but plenty of white. Acrylics always dry darker than you think, so sometimes on your palette it can look really light, but when you lay it on the canvas it can look darker. And all we're going to do, we're going to paint the dry sand, which is this nice sort of beigey sort of colour. It's going to be our dry sand. And then to get the wet sand, where the wave has kind of rolled over, we're just going to add a little bit of blue. So some ultramarine blue and turquoise to our mix. Just kind of create like a bluey grey. And then we're just going to block in this sort of area underneath our wave. And this is going to be where all the sand is a bit wet. And then if we get a little bit more turquoise and just sort of add it to that mix, what I want to do is create just kind of like a middle sort of shade that's in between the wet sand and in between the sort of tropical water. And I can kind of link the two areas together. Now we're going to put lots of things like our detail and our waves over the top. But a bit like our sky and our ocean, if we blend the colours underneath, that will trick your eyes and make it look really realistic. So by laying this nice foundation, we can put all the detail over the top. So first we're going to block in the colour, and then we're going to use our brush and we're going to gently blend it. So I'm just trying to get all the bits of canvas showing. And then what I'm going to do now, look, I'm going to just start gently blending this area all together. So in nature, you don't notice these jumps. So what we're going to try to do, look, we're just going to get some turquoise and we're just going to mix the two areas. Look, just really gently back and forth with a soft brush. Blend that line together just so it looks nice and seamless. And it will look more realistic. Yay, look at that. Really easy. So we've got this illusion of shallow water. Now my paint wasn't totally dry, look, and it's left some scuff marks, but don't worry, we can just paint over that. It's no bother. It's not a big deal. So we're going to paint some clouds now. So I'm going to get some white and some cerulean blue, some white and some cerulean blue. I've got a dry brush, it's not wet at all. And I'm going to wipe most of my paint off. Now the reason I wipe most of the paint off is I've got a dry brush and it's really soft and I've got barely any paint. It's kind of like having a sort of chalky residue, and then I can kind of just scrape the soft brush against the canvas and it leaves this nice impression of sort of marshmallow wispy clouds. So by having hardly any paint on my brush and just hardly touching the canvas, it just kind of leaves like an impression. Now if I want to push down hard, look, more paint will come out. So if I push down really hard, more paint will come off my brush. But if I don't push hard and I just sort of gently rub it, I kind of make circles with the brush, it will kind of create these lovely sort of nice marshmallowy clouds. So there we go. So I'm just going back and forth. I'm leaving little gaps so some of the sky can shine through. So look, if I push down, it gets a little bit more of an impression. But on the sort of edges, I just really gently, softly go around it. And that kind of creates this sort of like cotton wool effect. We can do it at the horizon. We can cover up all those scuffs that I've just took the paint off with my tape. So we can cover things up. There's no need to panic. Now the good thing is, now you know how to do this, I can speed the footage up a little bit. You can add white over the top. So it's the same technique, but look, all I'm doing is adding white over the top. And again, if I push down hard, I get lots of white. If I want to ease up, I will just get less amounts and it will look more like it's fading off into the distance. So look, push hard and have lots of paint, you can get really bright white. Now this is the thing with acrylics. When I was painting it, this picture, look, it looks really nice and bright and all my clouds look nice and white. But in about 5 minutes it's going to dry and it's going to soak up all that blue that was underneath. So sometimes it can be a bit demoralizing because you just spent 5 minutes. That's me doing an impression of trying to get the chalk sort of paint residue off my clouds. So I've made my clouds kind of too similar. So I'm just going to make this one a bit bigger just so they don't look all the same, because they were kind of in a line that looked all kind of the same. So let's have a really big beefy cloud here. But yeah, sometimes your painting, it can dry quite flat, and the whites especially can absorb all the colours that are underneath and that bright blue. So look, it looks a bit flat now, even though I've just done it. It looked really white when I first did it. So we can leave it to dry and we can come back to it and we can put the highlights back on in a minute. So let's work on the ocean water. So let's get some of that cerulean blue and turquoise. And let's just blend this area while our clouds are drying. So all I'm doing, I'm just adding a little bit more turquoise. So there's not so much of a jump between that really deep ocean in the far distance and the shallow water. So it just looks a bit nicer. And then I'm going to get some tape, because I'm rubbish at drawing a straight line. And I'm going to create a wave. Now I made a massive boo-boo. I don't know if anyone who's very intelligent can spot it. But I didn't let my paint dry. I don't know if you just noticed. I just stuck that tape over the top of wet paint, which was really dumb. And you'll see in a minute why that's dumb. But as I say, I like to leave all my mistakes in the tutorials because I want to show people everyone makes mistakes. So all I've done, look, I've mixed the deep ocean watercolour, which was phthalo blue, ultramarine blue and cerulean blue. But look, when I took the tape off, I had a lovely straight wave. But look at that. Oh my God. Disaster. Oh. So I was screwing. I wasn't happy. But lucky enough, it's acrylics. As I say, acrylics are the best. They're so easy. So I can literally just mix up the same colours, look, and I can just paint it back over. And no one would know. If I had edited this out the video, you would all think I'm great and an absolute perfectionist. And I never make mistakes. I'm some sort of guru or something. But I'm not. And I'm trying to show everyone is not. It's just they don't show everything on social media. So look, now we've got a lovely wave. Let's make a cool wave. So let's get some ultramarine blue and some white and a small brush. So, and a little bit of cerulean blue. Let's warm it up a little bit so it's not as dark. Ultramarine is really, really cool. So it's very good for doing shadows. And then what we're going to do, we're going to paint our far away sort of cliffs. So the reason we're using this nice light blue is to make it look like the cliffs are far off into the distance. So by mixing ultramarine blue, which is a bit darker, some cerulean blue and white, and because our horizon is really nice and pastel at the bottom, this blue sort of landscape in the background sort of stands out against it. And what it is all those cliffs are reflecting the blue from the sky, and it makes it look like it's far off into the distance. But it's really, really easy. It's just using colour to trick the eye. And then I painted some waves, but I forgot to press the video. So we're doing really well. I think I was still suffering trauma from my tape incident. But I'm going to show you how to do it. So don't worry, I will show you how to do it. So don't worry if the painting skips all of a sudden. I'm going to add some phthalo blue and some yellow. And all I'm going to do is just on my wave that I made, I'm just going to make it a little bit more turquoisey by adding some yellow to it. So I'm just going to make it look a little bit less vibrant by adding a bit of yellow to the mix. I think the blue was just a bit too bright and harsh. And then while I've got that colour, it's just phthalo blue and yellow. I can just outline this wave here and just come under that rock, and that kind of looks like a shadow underneath the wave. And then look, this is what I was doing. So I'm just getting some white and a brush, and I'm just creating the illusion of like splashing, sort of crashing waves. But what I kind of wanted to do, which is a cool little trick, is wipe most of the paint off my brush and then just kind of have like reflections in the water. So you have this crashing wave, but also you have this kind of like spray, and you have like I can't talk today. Reflections in the water's surface. So there we go. Kind of looks like eyelashes, if that's a thing. So then we're just going to add a little bit of froth either side of them. See how it goes. We can always change them later. The great thing is if you kind of make a mistake and you don't kind of like your areas that you're painting, like now, look, I can go back and rework areas. So the great thing is this is all dry. So now if I just get white straight from a tube and go over it, look, I can thicken up the paint in areas and I can leave that kind of glow that we've got, that nice sort of soft bluey glow around the white areas. And it kind of makes my clouds look really natural and realistic because it's kind of got that glow. So there we go. I'm just making them more vibrant. Look, there's the tube. I'm just going straight out the tube. We're not glamorous on this channel. We're rough and ready. Look, straight out the tube. And we're just making areas look more white, more vibrant. We can even add, look, some clouds sort of breaking away over here. This area is kind of lacking in clouds, so let's sort of link it up together. That looks kind of cool, doesn't it? And then look, again, if your whites that you've just laid down have become more blue, you can go over the top of them to make them look more frothy. You can even look, get thick white paint and make a little wave here. So just think of yin and yang. If you have sort of like bright highlights, you kind of want shadows next to them and they complement one another. Let's get some brown and some blue. So burnt umber and ultramarine blue almost make black. And let's block in our rocks. So look at that, it almost looks black, but it's kind of just really, really dark bluey brown. So let's make some big chunky rock and 2, 3 little small ones. And then let's get some white and let's mix it into that mix. And we should get a nice bluey grey. We can always add more blue. And then let's get the same mix and add a separate one with some white and some yellow. Now, why am I doing this? I'm creating 2 colours. Look, I've got a bluey grey one, which is the cold colour. And I've got a warm colour because it's got white and yellow. Now, think of the 3 little bears or think of yin and yang. I've got the original colour. I've got a cool colour and I've got a warm colour. Now, with the cool colour, look, I can add some highlights. And these are areas of the rocks that are in the shade. So they're getting some sunlight, but they're not getting much and they're still very cool. So they're getting like bluey sort of tints in the shade. And then I can get the warm colour, which is more white and yellow. Let's just add a little bit more white and yellow to make it a bit brighter. And I can add highlights, which are more in the sunlight. So if the light is coming from this side, I can just add some yellowy, pastel yellow highlights. And what it should do is make my rocks look like they're glowing in the sun and more 3D. Look at that. So by combining the darks and the lights, we can mix the 2 together. Look, and you can even add some white to get a really bright highlight. And you can put real sharp edges just where the edges of these rocks are getting bleached in the sunlight and they're picking up some harsh sunlight. There we go. So just try to work out where the sun would be coming from and try to do it the same on all the rocks so it all matches. And then look, I can get some white and the blue. I can even look, create a shadow effect in my water. A lot of this we're going to cover up with sea foam and bubbles and crashing waves. But it's kind of cool, look. I can get some white. I can go round these rocks and just sort of imply the waves are sort of crashing against them, covering up the shadow that I've just done. And I can even get some of the dark blue, look, and just go round things like the base of that white. So I'm just complementing each bit. Like I'm trying to work out, just like the rocks, if there's a highlight there's gotta be a shadow. So just think of it like that. If you add some highlights, you've got to have some shadows. Okay, so let's get some turquoise. Mine's all dried, and some white. So turquoise and a bit of the lighter shade of turquoise, which is just turquoise and white. And what we're going to do, we're going to do some cool stuff. Everyone has been learning about water. So this is called a liner brush, and this is a really thin brush, and what we're going to do is we're going to create sort of zigzags in the water. So anyone who's been watching the water tutorials on the channel, we've been doing this a lot lately, where we've all been learning about how light works on water. And the great thing is we've got playlists on how to paint water and waves. But the great thing is once you learn how to do it, you can do it in all different colors and do all different versions, from sunsets to oceans to tropical water. So I'm just adding more white to our mix, and I'm just going to make these sort of light refractions look a little bit more pastel. And then we can kind of link the two areas together just so it looks more realistic. So I'm just linking all this area. The great thing is a liner brush, they're literally £1 or $1. They're so cheap, but they are literally so thin. They are great for doing this, and they're great for things like if you're ever going to paint long grass or hair or fur, whatever. Anything that you need a thin brush, tree branches, things like that. Okay, so water looks good. So let's get some white. And let's make the sky colour. So let's make white, ultramarine blue and cerulean blue. We need a bit of cerulean blue, I think. So just like the clouds, we're trying to match the sort of sky colour. We're making it nice and pastel with white. And what we're going to do is we're going to create an undercolour before we put our highlights out on our ocean water. So we're going to learn how to paint sea foam and how to paint realistic ocean water. So the ocean tends to have like a nice sort of frothy sort of wave that comes up towards the beach, and it has this sort of like nice sort of border where it has foam and spray. So we are going to kind of make that with this colour. We're just going to create a nice thick border, and I'm going to swap to a thinner brush, and I'm just going to link some zigzags up to the border, and the opposite I'm going to have some bubbles and some froth just to create foam. Again, this is nice shallow water, or the illusion of it. So we want it to make it look really nice and real. So link some of them up to the border and some not. And then now, look, I can go a little bit faster. We do have a more advanced tutorial on how to paint waves, and it's got lots of secret tips that are not in this video if you'd like to check that out, with how to just do it really easily, step by step. So if you'd like to check that out, that's available on the channel. So there we go, we're just going to link some of these to the border. And then we're going to get some turquoise, and all I'm going to do, I'm going to get a dry brush. I'm just going to create a wave here in the middle, because I think this area is a bit bland. So I'm just going to create a wave with some turquoise. I'm using turquoise because it's more shallow. And this is going to kind of be the shadow that I can put some highlights over the top of. So I'm just using a dry brush, and I'm just smoothing it out. Let's have another one just down here. And then I'm going to get some thick white paint, look, and I'm just going to create some froth, and it's going to look like a wave. And if I don't like something, look, I can just paint over it. We can always fix things. So look, I've just got pure white straight from the tube, and I'm just thickening it up just to make it look like a big frothy wave in the shallows. And I can do the same now, look, on our border. Make this look more 3D. I've got really thick paint. And I can start doing some of my zigzags and some froth and bubbles just to link all this area together and make it look more realistic. And the nice thing is the colour that we just laid, it's not wasted. It sort of highlights and sort of glows around these bubbles. And as I say, the white will probably fade a little bit as it dries. You can always go over it again, just like you did with the clouds. So if you find that your work looks really vibrant now and then dries a bit flat, you can just go over things. Like, take your time at home. Obviously this is a bit speeded up for YouTube. Let's add some bubbles on our crashing rocks so it looks like some foam. And let's get some of the sand colour. It's a little bit more yellow to it. And let's put some zigzags. Now this was a painting tutorial that we did recently. This was how to paint realistic water in under 10 minutes. And this shows you exactly how to do this and create sort of shimmer on the ocean. So if you want to check that out, that's a really helpful video, and it's only 10 minutes long, so you can learn it super quick. But trying to link these areas, look, by using this lighter colour, we can kind of link these two areas, so there's again not so much of a jump in transitions. So I'm happy with that. Let's get some turquoise and let's just go around this border. Now this white is kind of dry, we can just go around it. So just like we did with the darker waves in the background, we're just doing the exact same thing. We've got a highlight, so we must have a shadow, and we're just putting this dark turquoise just underneath. Should make it look more 3D. So just take your time at home. As I say, you can just go back and forth, you can rework areas. So I'm just noticing bits I don't like in the painting, so I kind of think there should be another wave here. So I'm just getting some white, and I'm just going around bits of the areas that I think need a bit of work. So I've got some of that blue, and I'm just using that really thin liner brush, and I'm just going to create an outline just to make my wave look more 3D. So all it is cerulean blue, ultramarine blue and white. There we go, same as the top of our sky. And I think this area looks a bit flat and a bit wrong, so I'm just going to get some blue and I'm just going to change it. I'm just going to make my waves a little bit flatter. So I'm just going to make them look like they're crashing down a bit more. I think that looks more natural and realistic. Just for perspective, it was just really annoying me. So I think that looks more realistic. And why not, let's have a crashing wave here. See, originally I had a reference photo and it didn't have a tree or any rocks in it. And I kind of changed it as I was going along, because I think the painting, originally I just wanted to teach how to paint a beach and how to paint water, but I think it kind of lacked depths, and I think being a good painter is adding things to your work to make it look much more like that you're lost into the painting. So I'm just going to get some white, some ultramarine blue and some brown. And I'm just, now we've got that blue sort of hum, I'm just going to create a sharp dark colour with my liner brush and just go around that edge to make it more 3D. Yeah, because I think sometimes in the painting you've got to decide, look, I think this is cool, but I think it's a bit bland. I don't really like the sand, and I think there's nothing really going on the right hand side. So let's mix up a warm colour. So let's get some brown, let's get some white, a little dot of blue, just turn it more grey, and some yellow. And we'll create this sort of nice colour, like this sort of warm beige. And let's just create some wet sand here. We've got that nice border that we've just done to make it look 3D. So if we just go underneath that. But I think it's a bit too red. It kind of looks like a brick colour. It's a bit too reddy with the brown. So look, let's just put some more blue into it to make it more grey. There we go. And it should dry more grey. So blues are really, really good for cooling things down. Yellows, oranges, reds are really good for warming things up. And let's get a flat brush and some white and some ultramarine blue. Whoops, I think my brush is really dirty. Let's just get some clean paint. And let's just create like a shimmer on that sand. So it kind of looks like the light sort of reflecting onto the sand. I can just neaten up my sand that was kind of a bit scruffy. And I can always get some of the sky colour and just sort of soften this area. So the sky colour, all it was ultramarine blue, white and cerulean blue. And all I'm doing, look, I've just got a brush, I'm just softening areas. And I can get some phthalo blue and cerulean blue. And I'm just reworking areas. Look, now I changed that wave. I'm just putting the border back in just so it looks a bit more 3D. Same with this one, because I changed it, I'm just reworking it. So don't be afraid if you don't like something in your painting, it's not set in stone, you can always change things back. So by adding like a bit of turquoise, look, I can just get a sharp edge with my flat brush and just add a bit of more sort of like shadow just on the top of the wave, just looks so it looks like it's rising up. I can add distant waves, just really thin lines. Look, I can even make the border between the land and the sky look a bit more darker. So if you change things, just take 5 minutes and just fix things. Look, I'm just going round where I've changed it, just putting it back. Just spending that few minutes makes all the difference. And you don't have to do it exactly the same as the one I've got here. Let's put some reflections here against this nice wave. You can add things to your painting. You can change it up to be how you like it. I always think it's really cool when people tag me on Instagram and Facebook with their own versions and they've added things to the painting or done something different. I always think that's a really cool little trend. So don't be afraid to experiment. So look, again, I'm just putting a bit of turquoise. I was kind of struggling because I kind of knew the painting needs something else and I kind of didn't know what. So I'm painting along, but in my head it's sort of computing and going, what should we do? What should we do? And I was kind of thinking, what should I do? So I was just kind of getting some turquoise and just putting in some ripples. I was just kind of figuring it out. And then it came to me, eureka, we need a tree. That's what we need. So I got some chalk. Now the great thing about chalk is you can just draw over your painting, and if you don't like it, there's no commitment, you can just rub it out. So let's mix up the rock colour, which was ultramarine blue and burnt umber to get that sort of almost black colour. And let's block in a big tree. Now if you dry your painting and you do not like your tree, you can always just rub it out with a baby wipe. So always dry your painting. And then what I'm going to do, look, I'm going to dry my canvas and I've got to wipe away that chalk. And I'm going to get some yellow and I'm going to create a highlight colour. So I'm going to get yellow and purple to make it like a gold colour. So yellow and purple to make like a goldy sort of colour. And I'm going to add plenty of white. So yellow, purple and white. Lean more to the yellow because we want it brighter. Let's get loads of white. We're going to kind of make this sort of pastel gold. And we're going to go down the bottom edge and just outline our tree trunk. And then we're just going to create little rings on it. So if I zoom in for you, we're just going to blur it and create little rings. And this is going to look like it's 3D. So look at that. So we've got this nice gold on the bottom of the tree, and then we're going to mix up. Let's get a clean brush. I'm running out of space here. Let's get some blue, ultramarine blue and white to create a really light pastel blue. Look at that. And then we're just going to do the opposite side. Now this is the side that's getting all the sunlight, so it's kind of getting bleached, and we're just going to link up those rings. Look, and we're just going to gently blend it into the brown, and it should look like a 3D palm tree. Yahoo! And if it's a bit scruffy, look, we can always go back to the brown and just put in a bit more brown just to make it look and link the areas together, just so there's no much of a jump. And it should look 3D. And then all you have to do, look, is just refine it. So look, all I'm doing, look, I'm just taking my time. I'm just going over the same colour. I'm just scraping areas just to make it look more realistic and linking the loops together. And it should look seamless. Now if you swap to a flat brush, we're going to paint the palm tree leaves. So what we're going to do, we're going to get the same dark colour that we painted the tree trunk, and then we're just going to come down diagonally from the top of the painting. And the great thing is a flat brush has a flat edge, and you can create really spindly palm tree leaves. Look at that. Really easy. Now excuse my hand, there's not kind of a way of me showing you without my hand being in the way, but all we're doing, look, we're just coming out diagonally, coming straight down. You can even do a stem and then come diagonally from that stem. Excuse the focus, it loves my hand. Right, there we go. And you can always thicken the paint up, look again, and just go over the top just to make it look bolder and darker. So all I've done, look, I've just given it 2 coats of paint with the same colour. And then all I'm doing here, I'm just creating some shadows of those leaves on my tree trunk. And I'm just making the top area a little bit more in the shade. And it should look like the leaves and everything are casting a shadow on my trunk. And again, just adds to the realism. So I've got some chalk and I'm going to draw some large rocks here on the beach just to sort of frame the painting. So let's have some rocks here in the corner. I'm going to get my rock and tree trunk colour, which was burnt umber and ultramarine blue, which we're going to mix together. I'm just going to block them in. So all I'm doing is just blocking in the shape of rocks. As I say, you can practice with chalk before you commit to anything. So you can sort of have ideas and think what you want beforehand and draw it with chalk. So let's have a few little ones that are sort of creeping into the water. And then we're going to do the same trick. We've got our cool colour and our warm colour for the highlights and the shadows. So do you remember the cool colour was the mix with some white, and it was ultramarine blue, burnt umber and white to create this grey sort of colour. And the other mix was taking the ultramarine blue and burnt umber and adding yellow and plenty of white. So look, I'm going to do the dark shade first. I'm just going to make gaps to make it 3D, and then I'm going to get the lighter shade, and just like the rocks in the background, look, just put some highlights on the front edges where the sun would be hitting those rocks. And the good thing is, once I've added the texture, look, I've added the colour and the texture, I can always go back to my dark colour and then start shaping the rocks. So all I do is I do the highlights first, and then I get the dark colour, and then I just turn them into rocks. I kind of outline them, see? And it makes them look really 3D. And the good thing is I want a dark corner here in the left hand side because I want to sign it in that corner. So by putting these big dark rocks, it's kind of good because then my signature will stand out against it. So let's make them more square. And I can even get some white now that they're dry and outline them, and this will look like foam and froth going around the rocks. Again, just another added detail. So just think of little areas that you can add detail to, make it look more realistic. And then I'm going to get some of the gold colour. I'm just going to add a little bit of white, and I'm just going to put some really sharp highlights just on the edge. Now if you think these rocks are closest to us, so they're very, very dark, but also the highlights will be very, very bright because they're kind of in focus and right next to us. So I'm just going to put some smidges of bright yellow just on there, on the tips of these rocks. I can always smudge it in with the previous colour just so there's not much of a jump. And it just makes them look more 3D. And then I can get some of the cool colour and lots of white. So there we go, some ultramarine blue. And I can just create a shadow, look, underneath some of them. Just have a nice cool shadow, just to make it look like they're casting a shadow. I'm just going to darken that corner because I want to sign it there. And then this is a cool trick, just getting some white and yellow. Just doing the opposite, so think of what I was saying about yin and yang. Just putting some sharp lines. This is just the sunlight coming in between the leaves. And I can just go around the border with my liner brush and just make it look nice and sharp. And if I get some of the sky colour, which was just white, ultramarine blue and cerulean blue, and I just use that flat brush just to sort of blend areas, just so it looks like some of the sky and the clouds are sort of reflecting down. And by just doing sort of straight lines, I can create gaps to make it look like waves. And then just little things like where on the distance, just adding some white on the border where my horizon joins. I can just create a bit of a divide. But I pretty much think she's finished. So I've signed her in the bottom left hand corner and stuck on a nice easel. So you've learned how to paint realistic clouds in the background and how to push them back. How to push these cliffs back with the nice blue, We've got our rocks with the crashing water. We've learned how to paint the water and blend it so it looks like it gets more shallow as it comes towards the beach, and then to put the detail over the top. We've got our 3D rocks with highlights and our 3D palm tree with highlights and shadows as well. So there's plenty of tutorials on the channel now. I've made playlists for everyone. There's things like how to paint water, how to paint landscapes, all on the playlist now, so binge away. And don't forget to tag me at mstewartpaintings with your versions, and don't forget to like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and happy painting everyone. Have a lovely week ahead and take care of yourselves. See you soon. Bye.